Hey guys, welcome back to my channel for the long awaited books I've read recently video. Last time I did this you guys really loved it, you really enjoyed it. I had loads of people emailing me, leaving me comments, and I still got people commenting on that video and I love it. I love like a little book community, I really like it. But I have not been great with my reading this year. My Goodreads sort of book challenge is set for 20 books 2019. I'm currently 7 books in and it's July now, so it's not looking promising, but to be honest, about 5 of these books that I'm going to mention in this video I've read within the last 6 weeks. So maybe I'm getting back on it. I'm trying to be good. It's so difficult to like take the time for myself and sit and read when I've got so many other things to be doing. Hashtag self-employed life. You just feel guilty for taking any time for like stuff that's not work. But I'm getting better. I'm trying. By the way, I am wearing clothes. I've got this little bandeau on. You just can't see it. I'm too short. But let's talk about what we're all here for. Books. I've actually only got 2 physical books to show you because the rest of the books I've read on my Kindle. I'm a convert. I now love my Kindle. I used to be a staunch Kindle hater. I really hated the idea of Kindles. I thought there's nothing better in this world than like a proper book. I still agree with that sentiment, but books are bulky, they take up space, they're expensive. What to do with it once you've read it. With my Kindle, it's like a one-off payment for the Kindle, and then the books are like super cheap to download onto it, and then once you finish reading it, you just like delete it from the Kindle, and that's it. Like, I'm trying to be more minimal, and this is my way of doing that. I love my Kindle. I am now that person. I've got the Paperwhite. It is super lightweight. It's tiny, it's really thin, it's waterproof, it's like backlit so you can read in the dark, but it's not like blue light so it doesn't hurt your eyes. I just love it. I'm a convert. I really love it. But let's jump right in with this. This is I'll Be Gone in the Dark by Michelle McNamara, one woman's obsessive search for the Golden State Killer. This was kind of a cult book last year. Everyone was reading this last year. Everyone was going mad over it. So this is the story of the Golden State Killer, or the East Area Rapist, original Night Stalker, whatever you want to call him. He was actually captured last year, Joseph DeAngelo. Yes, I am going to do a video on him eventually, don't worry, just not yet. So this book is written by Michelle McNamara, who like made it her life's mission to find out who this guy was. It was like her entire life's work. And really sadly she actually died before she could finish this book. So it's sort of finished up with her notes. It does say like what's just come from her notes and what hasn't. Which is just really sad because she died, the book got finished, it got published, and then really soon after the Golden State Killer was finally caught. And he was actually probably caught on the back of this book because it really renewed public interest in finding the Golden State Killer. So Michelle McNamara did a really good thing with this. But I'm almost ashamed to admit this, I couldn't finish this book. Couldn't do it. Really struggled. I think because it's written like fiction, so if you don't know this is a true story, you'd read it just thinking, oh, like, oh, this is fiction, this is made up. But I think the fact that it's so graphic, it's so true to life, it's also real, it makes it really hard to read it. And I do true crime for a living. I can read some of the goriest things, like blood, guts, does not bother me. But this is so personal. It really talks about like the actual people and like their thoughts and their feelings as what was happening. And I don't know if that's so much the reason I couldn't finish it, but I did struggle at some points. This isn't the kind of book that you can sit down and just like binge. You can't read this for like 4 or 5 hours at a time. You like read a chapter, then you put it down, then you come back to it. And I like a book that I can binge because otherwise I won't come back to it. Which I think was my problem with this. Don't get me wrong, I fully intend to finish it one day. I've read just over half of it, but I had to admit defeat. I've been reading this for over a year and I can't get to the end. I can't do it. I will eventually though, I will do it. I may actually get the audiobook, because I've got an Audible credit to use up for this month, so I might get the audiobook and maybe that'd be more successful. Like, it is genuinely incredible. The way it's written, the research behind it is amazing. I just couldn't do it, and it makes me so sad because I really want to do it and I just couldn't. So maybe we'll revisit this one eventually. And the second physical book, which is also the first book I read this year, is The Inexplicable Logic of My Life by Benjamin Elire Sáenz. I really hope I say his name right because he wrote my favourite book in the entire world, which is Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe. If you've never read Aristotle and Dante, then go out, buy that book, it will change your life. It is my favourite book in the entire world, and I was really hesitant to try something else by the same author because I just knew that it could be the best book in the world and it wouldn't live up to my love for Aristotle and Dante. And I was right. This book isn't as amazing as Aristotle and Dante, but it is pretty damn close. The way that St. Nez writes is just so poetic. Even like the most mundane things he writes in the most beautiful, gorgeous way. Everything in his book has a meaning. Like everything is beautiful, and I just really like that about his writing. Some people find it a little bit like too much. I find a lot of the reviews I read of his writing say like, oh, it's just like gratuitous, but I think it just adds to this world. I think the best way to describe it is just to say it's a very poetic book. This is the story of Salvador, who is basically just a teenager trying to figure out his life. There's no particular plot to it. If you like a really plot-driven book, then this isn't for you. But it's just a gorgeous story. It's just a story of Salvador, his best friend Samantha, and their new friend Vito, and they're like discovering life as they like grow together and grow apart. And he's got an openly gay single dad. His mum died when he was really young. It's about his relationship with his grandmother. It's quite cultural as well, a lot of stuff about like Latino culture, and I just think it's really beautifully written. I really like it. It's definitely a young adult book, but anybody could read this and really enjoy it. Oh, and the best thing about this book is there is next to no romance. There's a tiny little romance story, but it's definitely a subplot, and it's like a really important thing to like boost the main story forward. But this isn't a romance driven book, it's just a story about friendship, about self-discovery, and I love that because there's nothing more I hate in the world than gratuitous romance. If a storyline doesn't need romance, don't bother. You don't need romance to have a good book. And then we move on to my Kindle books, which I've written down on here. The first book I downloaded on my Kindle, as soon as I got it, I opened it up, this is the first book I downloaded, was You by Caroline Kepnes. Now, this is what the Netflix series is based on. It's based on a book, shock horror. And I watched the Netflix series at the beginning of the year, absolutely loved it. I loved the series, I thought it was absolutely brilliant. And I was really intrigued by the book, so I decided to pick it up and give it a read, and it did not disappoint. It's pretty similar to the show, but there's quite a lot of things that the show added that isn't in the book. So even if you've watched the show, I would recommend reading the book as well. Sort of like, it feels like kind of two parallel worlds, like they're not quite the same. Sorry, I'm just kind of assuming that everyone's seen the series. I should probably explain what the book's about. So the book is written from the perspective of Joe. Joe's the narrator, so like you're in his head. And he works in a bookstore, and one day this beautiful young girl called Guinevere Beck walks into the bookstore, and he is immediately infatuated, in love, obsessed, stalker style, and he like makes it his life mission to get Beck. And I know the TV series is creepy and it's disturbing. The book is one step further. The book is downright traumatizing. It is wrong in every single way, and the weirdest thing about when you're reading the book is because you're reading all from Joe's point of view, at certain points you find yourself agreeing with him and you're like, oh yeah, I see why he's thinking that, and then you've got to like snap yourself out of it because you're reading it from his perspective. He's justifying everything to himself, and therefore like persuading you as the reader that what he's doing is all right. You have to like take a step back and be like, wait, no, he's the bad guy in this story. All of the characters in this are very flawed. Like there's no single character that I would say is like a good person, which just adds to how weird this story is. It's very psychological. The book itself is so addictive. I read it in like a day. Highly recommend. And then there's Crazy Rich Asians by Kevin Kwan, which I was persuaded to pick up after watching the film. And oh my god, I love this book in every way. I loved it. I loved the film so much. I watched the film on a flight to Florida, and I just sort of like, there wasn't anything else I wanted to watch, so I was like, oh, I'll watch this. And I fell in love with it. It's amazing. So I definitely wanted to read the book, and I'm so glad I did. I would probably say that the Crazy Rich Asians book to movie adaptation is the closest like movie adaptation I've ever seen. Like, it is really close. But that didn't really take away from my enjoyment of the book, because the book is actually told from loads of different people's perspectives that you kind of don't see so much in the movie. So like, it had that twist on it, but the actual storyline is incredibly similar. Crazy Rich Asians is shockingly the story of some crazy rich Asians. It's a story of these like super wealthy Chinese families. I'm not talking just like millionaires, billionaires, I'm talking like I don't know what comes after billionaire, a lot of money. And it's basically just about the culture that comes around this money, but also the very traditional Chinese culture as well. And it's just like a very strange world where you're sort of tiptoeing these two worlds of like wealth, but also tradition. It's entirely ridiculous and completely melodramatic, and it's shallow, and it's amazing. It's the story of a pretty successful economics professor from New York called Rachel Chu, and she has been going out with Nick Young for a couple of years, and then Nick invites her back to Singapore to attend his best friend's wedding where he's the best man. Only Nick comes from a super wealthy family, and he's kind of like the #1 bachelor of Singapore. He's the man that everyone wants to marry. And so Rachel goes to Singapore with him, having no idea about any of this wealth, and it's just about her sort of discovering this and discovering his entire world. And I just really enjoyed it. It's silly and it's amazing. And then I read The Sun Is Also a Star by Nicola Yoon. I wanted to read this because I read Everything by the same author, and I read that like probably a couple of years ago now, and I really enjoyed it. So when I saw the movie for The Sun Is Also a Star, I like googled it and saw that it was by the same author, and I was like, okay, definitely want to read that book. This was actually the first book I read on holiday, and I ate it up. I think I read it in less than like 6 hours. It's a really quick read. It's not the best book you're ever going to read, but it's a cute YA book nonetheless. It's the story of 17-year-old Natasha, who's literally on her last day in New York. She's lived in New York basically her entire life, but she's being deported back to Jamaica with her family, where they're all originally from. And she's on her last day in the city. She's running around trying to do anything she can to stop herself from getting deported. And she meets Daniel. Daniel is a Korean American, so there's like really interesting like cultural points made in the book. And he's this hopeless romantic guy. He sees Natasha, like immediately like falls in love / falls in like with her. They get talking, and he basically persuades her that they should try this experiment where he's going to try and make her fall in love with him by the end of the day. Of course, he doesn't realise that she's getting deported, blah, blah, blah. And it's just the story of them spending that last day together. There's a lot of like coincidences in it that a lot of people would probably like roll their eyes at and be like, that would never happen in real life. Which is what like I did a few times, because I'm like, Natasha, I'm a realist. I mean, if you're like a hopeless romantic, you probably see the book from a different perspective, which I do quite like the idea of. It's cute, it's kind of got like an original story to it. It's just your standard YA book. I would recommend it if you're looking for like a quick, cute read, then it's probably quite a nice book to read. And then 2 books left are my crime fiction recommendations for this video. I've mentioned many times in my videos that I find crime fiction really hard to read because I find them so predictable. I went through a stage like a few years ago where I literally read like every single crime book I could get my hands on, and now I just find them really predictable. So I'm on a mission in life to find like an unpredictable crime fiction book that I just have no idea what's going to happen. And I actually might have found that in the form of The Perfect Child by Lucinda Berry. This book is crazy. I actually got this for free with my Kindle Unlimited membership, and oh my god, it is a page turner. I also read this one on holiday. I was sat by the pool and like literally couldn't put it down for like hours on end, which is why I've got this wonderful tan that people keep asking me about, I suppose. So if you ask me like by the end of like the first quarter of the book how the book was going to end, I literally would never have guessed the ending in a million years, which I really like. It is about a child, so if you're a bit funny about like stories about children and obviously like a bit of child abuse, then probably this one isn't for you. But it's the story of a toddler who is found wandering the streets. She's just completely abandoned, she's clearly malnourished, she's covered in like scars and like cuts and bruises. She's clearly like been a very abused child, and she's taken into a hospital, and the surgeon who treats her actually like takes a real shine to her, and him and his wife, so it's Christopher Bauer and Hannah Bauer, end up fostering this little girl, and it's basically the story of what happens from there on out. I really don't want to say any more because I could ruin the entire thing. It's really good. It kept me gripped beginning to end. And then we're going to end on Thin Air by Lisa Gray. I probably should have switched these around and spoken about them in like a different order, but I literally finished this book yesterday. I didn't love this one as much as I loved The Perfect Child. I found this one really hard to get through. I actually read it on recommendation of my friend who read it. She said it was amazing, and I really struggled with it. Like, when I was reading it, I was enjoying it, but I found that if I put it down, I'd feel no inclination to like go back over to the book and pick it up again, which is what I struggle with, because it's got to be one that's going to get me reading again. I'd probably recommend it to people who like haven't really dabbled in crime fiction. Like, if you've never really looked into the genre, this is probably a good place to start, because it's a little bit watered down, I'll say. It's about a private investigator called Jessica Shaw, who specialises in missing people cases, and then she discovers that she's a missing person herself, so she goes on a mission to find out who she really is, what happened to her. And I'm not gonna lie, there were a couple of like good quick twists in there that I wasn't quite expecting, but in terms of crime fiction, I found it quite predictable. I think what I really struggled with is in the first part of the book, like, you're sort of getting to know all the characters, but there's actually like 5 separate storylines going on throughout it, and they do eventually obviously all come together, but I found that quite difficult because each chapter was like focusing on like a different part of the story. There's so many characters you need to like get your head around. When it came to the ending, they were mentioning characters that I like couldn't even remember because they'd just be mentioned right at the beginning of the book, and it was good. I did enjoy it. I did like the ending. I liked where the story like went. It was just a bit of a trek to get there, I'd say. But if you haven't dabbled in true crime, no, not true crime, crime fiction, then it is a good one. Like, it's a good book. I got it again on the Kindle Unlimited membership, so I probably wouldn't pay money for it. And they are all the books I've read recently. There's like a real mixture in there. I just kind of read anything. I'm not a fan of romance and not a fan of like sci-fi, but other than that, I will pretty much read any book that gets recommended to me. Speaking of, let me know your recommendations for me down below. Let me know what your favourite book you've read so far this year is. Go for it. All of these books will be linked down below in my Amazon store. If you go on it, like, all the books will just be on my store and you can go and buy the things. I will get a little bit of affiliate money if you go through that link, so if you don't want to, then just obviously type it in on Amazon. I won't hate you, it's fine, whatever. Thank you so much for watching, and I guess I'll see you next time. Bye guys.